Hi there. Ooh, I'm going live on my own profile. It's so scary. It's like standing in a line for a roller coaster and you're super excited and you want to get on the ride, but you think you might throw up. It's kind of how I feel right now. But I'm going live on my personal profile because, like, what's the point of having 1,500 friends if you don't tell them what you're up to? So I've been talking a lot about parenting on Facebook, on my business page, and in a group that I run, the Motherhood in the Making community. If you don't already know, I'm a psychologist, and in addition to being a mom of 4 kids and running a private practice, I also have a passion project, Motherhood in the Making, that offers support and guidance to parents. And this coming year I'll be running, please God, a parenting group for mothers called Reflective Parenting, developed by Sheila Redfern at the Anna Freud Center in London. And so that's what's new. I've been talking a lot about responding to our kids instead of reacting. So if you're a parent, you might want to tune in. I've been talking a lot about tantrums and about boundaries because that's really what we struggle with. That's really what brings us to ask ourselves as parents, like, what do I do? To really reflect on what we're doing. Now, when we come into conflict with our kids, it's not unusual that we feel or a sense of personal inadequacy. There's something wrong with me, I'm doing something wrong. Or disappointment in our kids, as in there's something wrong with them. And those are the two sort of approaches that parents come into the Motherhood in the Making community on Facebook. It's a Facebook group that I run, about 800 plus mamas. Or there's something wrong with my kid, help, there's something wrong here. Or I'm the worst mother ever, what should I do? You know, it's all going to shit. It's really important that we remember that in all relationships, all good relationships, there is conflict. Conflict is a natural, normal part of any relationship, particularly the parent-child relationship, because, you know, we're two separate people coming together, two different people coming together, different needs, and we need to balance those needs. How much more so it's important in the parent-child relationship that conflict, because it's really giving our child, the conflict is really a result, a function of our children growing up, learning about who they are and individuating from us as parents, that they're not just an extension of us, but they are in fact separate people. So the challenge is really balancing your kids' needs while teaching them limits on their behavior. Like, you can't behave that way, not only because it's bloody rude or inappropriate, but it's an asshole thing to do. That's not going to work for you in adulthood, right? Like, that's really what discipline is. We're teaching our children about the world, who they are, what they can expect of the world, what's expected of them, and how to function appropriately in the world so that they can make the most of it and contribute. That's what discipline is. That's what boundaries are. And our job as parents is to strike the balance between what they need and what they want, and to honor that while also setting appropriate limits in a kind, compassionate way. So it's kind of like, you can't always get what you want, but there's nothing wrong with wanting something. And it doesn't mean that you never get what you want, but you can't always get it. And that's pretty much the message that we want to convey to our kids. Of course, when our kids act up and misbehave, it invokes in us strong feelings that we need to contend with and we need to acknowledge in light of what we need and how our needs are being met and how our needs are being honored in this relationship. Granted, it may be with a 3-year-old child or a 13-year-old adolescent, but nevertheless, my needs here are important too. I talk a little bit more about this in tutorial series that I created. I'll leave a link above. It's 5 steps to stop reacting and start responding to your kids. In the 5th step, it's about responding to your kids. How do you do that? How do you set boundaries? And it really reflects a lot of what I'm saying here today. So the key here is to really set an environment in your relationship with your kids around understanding misunderstandings. That's really our goal here as parents, is we want to nurture relationships that are about understanding the misunderstandings, not about solving them, not about finding solutions, not about placing blame. Oh, hi, Shira. Not about placing blame on our children, or ourselves, but understanding what's going on. And that means that as parents, we're stepping into the minds of our children to figure out what's going on for them. I have a friend who was telling me her 1-year-old was smacking her, and I said to her, "What do you think was going on in her head. Now, obviously, my friend was like, she was really pissed. She's hitting me, and I hate it. And she's having her own emotional reaction to that, being whacked, even though it's by a 1-year-old. And I asked her, and she's like, the kid's a little shit. So what do you think's going on for your kid? She rightly so said, stop therapizing me. But she gave herself the opportunity to consider, like, what's going on for my 1-year-old, and it allowed her to separate her automatic reaction from what's really going on. Like, what's really going on in the mind of my 1-year-old? What's probably going on is, like, she just wants to see what happens next. She somehow has seen hitting, or she's experiencing her own aggression inside, and she wants to know, like, not consciously, like she's reflecting on it, but in an unconscious way in the process of development, of discovering who am I and what part of me is my emotional experience. What happens when I express my emotions in this way? What happens when I get angry? What happens when I cry? Hey, Yossi. What happens when I get excited about something? And the only way that I know about myself is what's reflected back to me. And a contrast to this is our children who are neglected and abandoned, who have no reflection, who have no mirroring, and they have very poor sense of self and identity, and even it's reflected in their neurological development. They suffer often from a condition called failure to thrive, which means they actually physiologically experience what is called symptoms of a broken heart. Not being seen, not being listened, not being heard, not being attended to. And so really what we want to do, that's a really extreme example, so let's not go over the cliff here, but that used to freak me out, because this is not the relationship we have with our children. The relationship we have with our children is one of understanding, and in spite of the conflict, what I want to do is I want to nurture a relationship where we can still feel connected in spite of the conflict, and in spite of the conflict, we can reestablish connection once it's ruptured. So that means that even though I'm so mad at you right now, I know that you're not going to leave me, I know that I'm understood, I know I'm going to be heard, but there's space for me to feel what I'm feeling, whatever that is. And we need to be open as parents, not only to our children's experience, but our own. And this is something I say a lot, this is something I talk a lot about, because we're in a society of self-care, and we don't really actually give ourselves permission to acknowledge what is the self? Like, who is this self that I'm caring for right now? And it's so important that we, as parents, connect with ourselves and our own needs and our wants and our wishes, and make room for them and accept them, so that we can also make space for our children's, so that we can set these boundaries, so that we can acknowledge their needs, and we can say, yeah, I see that you want something, you're not going to get it. If we don't do that, what happens is that when our children want something or they need something and they express their frustration, anger, rage around not getting it, that can really trigger us. Because what we may think, though not necessarily consciously, is like, who the hell are you? Who the hell are you to want something? I never got what I wanted. No one ever listened to me. No one ever heard me. And so it really triggers my experience of not having my needs met. So it's really important now as adults that we consider our own needs, our own wants, our wishes, our desires, and we take that into consideration when we're setting boundaries for our kids, when we are setting limits for our kids, so that we are, one, the limit is to protect our own needs and set a boundary on that, and I speak more about that in the tutorial series. And it's also to acknowledge our children's needs so that they feel heard and they feel like they matter, that they're valid, they exist, even if they're not going to get what they want. And that you're there to be there for them as they experience the disruption that they have when they don't get what they want. I don't know about you, but when I don't get what I want, like, I'm not happy. It's really hard. It's really hard not to get what you want. And I've had to learn over the years, I've had to learn through experience in adulthood, how to tolerate disappointment. And it's allowed me now as a parent to tolerate my children's disappointment and whatever might come up in that. That means their disappointment in an event, or their disappointment in other people, the world, or even me. That my children could be disappointed in me, that I could let them down. Now, instead of experiencing that as a personal inadequacy, I endeavor to be there, to just acknowledge that that's how they feel. They're not getting what they want. I'm not the person they want me to be. And even though we're in conflict, our relationship is an environment of understanding the misunderstandings, not judging them, not dismissing them, not finding solutions for them, but just understanding them. And in order to do that, I have to understand myself first and foremost, and also make space for curiosity about my kids' experience. So there you have it. On my personal profile, there's some thoughts. I've been talking a lot about this again on my business page, Motherhood in the Making, and also in the Motherhood in the Making community Facebook group. I'll leave links above. If you are a mama, you're welcome to join the Facebook group. If you're a papa, you can join me on my Facebook page. And I'll also leave a link for you to access the tutorial series that I put together. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you dug this, let me know, because your feedback means a lot to me. Have a great day. Bye for now.